What's going on, guys? Welcome to another Doctor Who Classic Review. Today I'm going to be reviewing the 6th Doctor Colin Baker story, The Trial of a Time Lord Mindwarp. So this is parts 5 to 8 of Trial of a Time Lord called Mindwarp, but it's this, even though it's parts 5 to 8, it's the second kind of story in The Trial of a Time Lord. A little bit confusing, it's a bit of a weird season, this one, but yeah, this is the second proper kind of story in the Trial of a Time Lord season. So yeah, I was interested to see what this one would be like, but anyway, let's get straight into it. This is The Trial of a Time Lord by Philip Martin. The Valeyard's prosecution continues as he presents damning evidence of the Doctor's interference on the planet Thoros Beta. Dangerous experiments are being carried out there that could affect the future of all life, and they must be stopped. But why is the Doctor so determined to help his former enemy, the greedy, opportunistic Syl? And why has he turned against his companion Peri? One thing is certain, someone will die. So very, you know, especially at the end there, someone will die. That's kind of a bit like, oh, if you don't know what this story is about, if you've never really looked into it before, I'd kind of got an idea of what was going on there and what it meant by somebody will die before watching this. But if you didn't know, that's a pretty scary thing on the back of there that you're thinking, oh, what is going to happen in this story? So yeah, quite an interesting little thing on the back of the DVD there. Also, you know, returning character of Syl is always something interesting as well. But anyway, let's get started with the cast. Alright, so Colin Baker is the 6th Doctor. Yeah, I quite like him. I'm gonna be honest, from what I've seen of him in season 22, which is his first season, you know, Twin Dilemma's part of season 21, but it should have been part of season 22. But yeah, in his first season, from what I've seen, mostly, especially with his earlier stuff, he doesn't really work. He's just, the way his character's written and everything doesn't work. However, from what I can tell so far, like I said, this is only the second story in Trial of a Time Lord I've seen. I haven't seen the other two after this yet. But from what I can tell so far, I like the 6th Doctor a lot more in this than I have in what I've seen of him in season 22. He just feels more like the character. He's a bit more funny at times. He's not as kind of, you know, shit with Peri. I mean, a lot of my problems with season 22 is that I don't understand why Peri's with this Doctor anymore, because he just treats her like shit in a lot of the early stories. I mean, towards the end of season 22, he does, you know, it does get better, but he's just such a dark and just not a doctory Doctor. But in Trial of a Time Lord, they seem to flesh his character out a bit more. They made him more likeable, and he's a much better character here. There's much more emotion there. He still has his funny and his some dark moments, but he's definitely a lot better in this season. And yeah, in this story as well, he's very good. He has a lot of moments where he's acting a little bit strange, a little bit wacky in the story, and I think Colin Baker does a great job of that as well. So yeah, all in all, pretty happy with the Doctor in this one. Nicole O'Brien as Peri Brown. In this one, actually, I think pretty good. Peri's one of those characters that I'm not the biggest fan of, not because I really don't like her as a character, but one, her American accent can kind of grate on me a bit. It's not too bad now, but it does kind of, you know, get me now and again, and annoy me a little bit. But you know, like I said, nowadays I've kind of got used to it, and it's not as big of an issue. But also the fact that Peri's never really seemed to be a character that's been that well developed, I don't think. She's just kind of, oh, we need a new companion for the Doctor, we'll just get Peri, and she's just kind of there. And you know, like I said, with the earlier stuff with the 6th Doctor, you don't really understand why she's still with this Doctor. She's barely been with him anyway. She was literally with him for what, 2 adventures with Peter Davison, the 5th Doctor? Then she comes to the 6th Doctor, he treats her like shit, and you don't really understand why she's here. And honestly, through a lot of the stories I've seen her in, she doesn't really do a whole lot. In this story, though, I feel like she does have a bit more to do. She feels a lot more in power, you know, when she's with the King, what's his name? King Yakranos or something like that, Yakarnos, and you know, that other guy who's like a werewolf dude. Yeah, she kind of takes control a bit more, and it's just so much better. I think she does a really good job in this one. This is also Peri's last story, so I'm glad that she does come good in this final story. Like I said, there are still some stories in season 22 that I haven't seen of her, so I look forward to seeing them, but at the moment I think this is my favourite, not necessarily my favourite performance by Nicole O'Brien, but my favourite way the character of Peri has been shown. She's just a bit more interesting and has a bit more to do in this one from other stories that I've seen her in, so yeah, pretty happy with her. Alright, so on to the good and the bad, starting with the good. The return of Syl and more of his race. I think it's really cool to have Syl back. Now, Vengeance on Varos, which is the other story that Syl's in, another Sixth Doctor story, and currently my favourite Sixth Doctor story, and from what I've heard, the general consensus probably will stay as my favourite Sixth Doctor story. Vengeance on Varos is just really, really good. It's not perfect, I give it a 9 out of 10, but it's very good. Syl, I think, worked as a very good villain in that story. I did say that he did annoy me a little bit just with the way he spoke and talked and that is a little bit to the case in this one. I don't think he's quite as bad in this one in some ways, but yeah, we've got more of his race there as well, and I think the rest of his race, like what's his name, I've got it written down here somewhere, Kiv, like the kind of main guy of their race, of Syl's race, he's pretty good. Syl's probably the most annoying of the 3 or 4 of these creatures that we see and hear. He's probably the most annoying, but I do quite like the return of him. Once again, like it was in Vengeance on Varos, it's a whole money thing. He just wants money, he wants to be rich, have all the money, and it's kind of the same sort of thing here again. Money does come up here and there, so yeah, I think it's an interesting little return, having another villain from Colin Baker's short run returning again. Yeah, I thought it worked quite well. The Doctor acting strange after the mind machine is used on him. So yeah, I like it. I think it's the cliffhanger to part 1. Is it? It's either part 1 or part 2. The Doctor gets, they put him in that machine and they do something with his mind, and then he kind of goes a bit loopy and a bit crazy. He starts like shouting and being really just strange. I think, like I said before, Colin Baker does a great job of that. It's something that I haven't quite seen from him yet, so it's nice to have that kind of a little bit funny, a little bit more wacky Doctor, instead of the more serious kind of shouty, annoying Doctor that we've seen a lot from Colin Baker. Yeah, I thought that was just a nice, interesting take on this incarnation, something a bit different, and I did quite like that. Transferring Kiv's brain into another body, so basically they find another one of Kiv and Syl's race and put his, because I think Kiv was dying or something, I don't know, he was getting old, his body was weak, and they wanted to transfer his mind into another body, so they found another one of their race, transferred it into that, but they still didn't feel like that was the best way to go about it, so they ended up eventually putting his brain into Peri's body, which is crazy. We'll get onto that in a second. But yeah, I thought it was quite interesting. A brain transfer sort of thing, something that, from what I can think of, we haven't really seen before. I mean, I guess kind of the brain of Morbius, the 4th Doctor story from season 13, kind of that sort of thing. But this was definitely a different take on it, and I thought it was quite interesting, with the machine and just with all the people, all the people doing the surgery and all that sort of stuff. I thought it was quite an interesting environment, and yeah, just a relatively interesting concept. Finally, for the good, Peri actually dies in this story. Now, I don't know. I actually do not. I knew Peri died in this story. I don't know if she comes back. I don't know if some way, maybe at the end of this whole. At the end of Trial of a Time Lord, maybe something happens, it gets reversed and she's okay, because we do find out that the reason she dies is kind of because of the Time Lords. They were trying to fix, they pulled the Doctor out of there to come to the courtroom for his trial. They kind of pulled him out, and that kind of consequently, resulted in Peri having to die because they were trying to fix things and all that sort of stuff. So maybe, depending on how it all ends, maybe they'll kind of bring her back at the end. I'm not 100% sure. I don't actually know. I swear I had something in my mind that she ends up marrying the King Yrcanos. So maybe that comes into play. So she doesn't actually die, she marries him. I don't know. But at the moment, at this current point in time, please don't spoil it, because I would like to stay away from spoilers if I can. Of course, that's hard with this being, such an old show at this point, old episodes. But if there's things that I currently don't know, like this, 100%, if you can try not to spoil it, please, that would be great. So at this current point in time, at the end of Mindwarp, to me, Peri is dead, and I think that's a crazy, crazy thing to do, killing off a companion. From what I understand, not really happened before up to this point. I know that, was it like Katrina or someone in, I think it was like the Daleks' master plan for the first Doctor died, but she was kind of only a companion for that story. So it's a little bit different, but like a full companion that's been here with the Doctor for as long as Peri had been, like a full-time companion, for her to just die at the end of this story was, it would definitely be pretty shocking if you didn't know it was going to happen. Alright, so now onto the bad. There are just a couple of things I want to say. First of all, the constant cuts to the courtroom can ruin the pace. This was another one of my issues with The Mysterious Planet, the first kind of story in Trial of a Time Lord. They've got to keep cutting to the courtroom because the Doctor got to keep saying things, you know, oh, objectifying to this, and then the Valeyard says something, and then the Inquisitor says something, and, you know, I can understand it. I mean, the whole point of this whole thing is that the Doctor's on trial, they're watching all these things happen on screen, and, you know, they're commenting on it and stuff, and you kind of need to see what they're commenting on, but it is a little bit distracting sometimes. Especially the first couple of parts, I felt like they were cutting away quite a lot, and it really kind of detracted away from the action a bit, so yeah, that wasn't my favourite thing, but I can understand why they're doing it, because otherwise it's just another story, so I can understand. King Yrcanos is a bit over the top, played by Brian Blessed, who's a brilliant man. I mean, he's a bit crazy, he's a bit of a nutjob, and he's really in his place in this role. But yeah, he is a bit over the top as a character, I'm not gonna lie. And then finally, a bit of a quick ending, you know, Perry dies, Syl presumably dies, everyone in that room pretty much dies from what I can tell, and it just kind of ends. And, you know, obviously it's gonna carry on to the next part, which is Terror of the Vervoids, but at that point it's a different story again, so yeah, I did feel like this particular story on this DVD, this part of the story, did end a little bit kind of randomly. Alright, so what am I going to rate The Trial of a Time Lord Mindwarp out of 10? I'm going to give it a 6.5 out of 10. I did like this one a little bit more than The Mysterious Planet, just because I felt like it was a bit better paced, there was a bit more going on, there was a lot more relevance, in my opinion, to the whole trial thing. One of my issues with The Mysterious Planet was, it kind of just felt like a story, and they just kind of, just a normal story, an average story, and they just kind of thrown the trial thing in there. Whereas for me, this one, the trial stuff, although yes, cutting to it all the time was an issue for me, it made a bit more sense, and it kind of came together a bit better in this story than it did in the previous one. So because of that, I've put it up half a point. But yeah, like the quick ending, the slightly over the top performances by some, and the constant cutting and stuff like that, and just generally being a decent story, but nothing, you know, mind-blowing, means I'm only giving it a 6.5 out of 10, but I mean, it's still I'd say it's still a good story. But anyway, that's going to be it for this video, guys. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed, please go ahead, like and subscribe, go down in the description and follow me on Twitter. That would be so great, and I'll see you guys in the next video.